Thank you.
This is that awkward moment when you're leaving, but everyone knows that you're not because you have like crew here and stuff.
This isn't going to end well for you, Blake. And deep down, even her most loyal fans can sense it. When both parties appeared in court for the first time, what was meant to be a routine 90-minute hearing turned into a tense and emotional showdown. Cameras flashed, reporters jotted every reaction, and the energy in the courtroom was electric, a reflection of just how high the stakes have become. In Hollywood, where image is everything and reputations can crumble faster than they're built, even one misstep can ignite a firestorm. And for Blake Lively, once the golden girl of the industry, this legal battle may be the beginning of her greatest downfall. For years, Blake was the embodiment of grace, stunning on red carpets, flawless in interviews, and adored by fans who viewed her as the perfect blend of beauty and poise. But behind the glamour, whispers of tension and power struggles had been quietly brewing. Her shocking courtroom defeat to fellow actor and producer Justin Baldoni has now shattered that glossy image, exposing cracks that many never imagined existed. What began as Blake's ambitious $250 million lawsuit, allegedly an attempt to reclaim control and clear her name, has spiraled into a brutal legal war, with Justin retaliating through a jaw-dropping $400 million countersuit. The tables have turned overnight, leaving Blake's team scrambling to find footing as one court ruling flipped the entire situation on its head. According to her attorney, Michael Go-Tottle, Blake's legal team is preparing to file an amended complaint, adding new claims and targeting new defendants. This aggressive move is being seen by insiders as a last-ditch effort to regain momentum, but many believe it reeks of desperation rather than strategy. Behind the scenes, tensions are running high. Sources close to the situation describe frantic meetings, restless nights, and rising panic as Blake's camp tries to manage both legal damage and public perception. Social media is ablaze with theories, and entertainment outlets are dissecting every detail, turning this private feud into a global spectacle. Observers now question whether this drama marks the beginning of the end for one of Hollywood's most celebrated stars, and possibly one of its most admired couples. Only months ago, the idea of Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni facing off in such a vicious public battle would have seemed unthinkable. But as the courtroom clashes intensify and more shocking details emerge, it's clear that this saga is far from over. What was once a fairy tale story of success, fame, and power has transformed into a cautionary tale about pride, betrayal, and the ruthless nature of Hollywood, a world where loyalty fades, alliances shift, and even the brightest stars can fall from grace in the blink of an eye. Blake Lively had long represented everything that Hollywood admired: grace, charisma, and an aura of effortless perfection. For years, she had been celebrated as a timeless beauty who balanced glamour and authenticity with remarkable ease. Her every red carpet appearance was studied, her interviews quoted, and her marriage to Ryan Reynolds painted as the epitome of modern romance. Together, they were the industry's golden couple, a rare blend of love, humor, and power that fans adored and brands worshipped. Blake's image wasn't just that of a movie star, it was a lifestyle, a carefully constructed symbol of success, elegance, and emotional intelligence. She was the celebrity who could charm at a charity gala, headline a blockbuster, and still seem like the approachable girl next door. Every move she made reinforced her standing as a woman who could do no wrong. On the other hand, Justin Baldoni was the heart of a new Hollywood generation, compassionate, idealistic, and outspoken about empathy, fatherhood, and social change. Known for his philanthropic projects and his visionary work in film and television, Justin embodied the kind of modern masculinity the industry desperately needed. His TED Talks inspired millions, his interviews about vulnerability earned him praise, and his creative ventures positioned him as both an artist and activist. When two figures like Blake and Justin collided in a legal war, it was bound to make headlines, but no one could have predicted just how destructive it would become. The feud erupted like a lightning strike. Without warning, Blake accused Justin of severe professional and personal misconduct, claims so grave they immediately set the entertainment world ablaze. Her allegations were specific, incendiary, and delivered with conviction. She followed up the accusations with an explosive $250 million lawsuit, a staggering figure that signaled not just a demand for justice, but an all-out declaration of war. Within hours, the news cycle went into overdrive. Every gossip site, entertainment outlet, and talk show dissected the situation, flooding social media with theories, reactions, and polarized debates. Hashtags trended worldwide. Commentators took sides. For weeks, it felt as if the world had stopped to watch two Hollywood titans destroy each other's legacies in real time. But beneath the surface of the headlines, the case was far more than a personal grudge match. In Hollywood, reputation is currency, the invisible engine that drives multi-million-dollar deals, franchise roles, and brand endorsements. A single accusation, whether proven or not, can determine whether a star rises or falls. Studios depend on clean images. Investors rely on credibility. For someone like Blake, whose name was tied to luxury contracts, film franchises, and family-friendly branding, the potential fallout was catastrophic. And for Justin, whose identity was built on moral integrity and empathy, the accusations threatened to unravel years of carefully cultivated respect. Initially, Blake appeared to dominate both the narrative and the courtroom. She went public first, commanding the spotlight with emotional statements that resonated with her enormous global following. Fans flooded social media in her defense, convinced she would never jeopardize her flawless reputation without irrefutable proof. Meanwhile, Justin seemed caught completely off guard. His team scrambled to issue a response as the story spiraled beyond control, and his once sterling image began to fracture under the pressure. The media largely sided with Blake in the early days, portraying her as a courageous woman standing up for herself against powerful forces. Justin's silence was interpreted as guilt, his hesitation as weakness. However, as time passed and more details surfaced, cracks began to form in the narrative. Whispers of inconsistencies, leaked documents, and insider testimonies began to muddy the waters. Suddenly, what had seemed like a clear-cut case of wrongdoing was evolving into a tangled web of power plays, manipulation, and revenge. The entertainment world held its breath as the story deepened. No longer just a lawsuit, but a war for reputation, credibility, and survival. What began as a shocking legal move had turned into a defining moment for both stars, threatening to rewrite everything audiences thought they knew about Blake Lively, Justin Baldoni, and the glittering, unforgiving world they both called home. That delicate balance of power between Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni shattered the moment Justin struck back with an earth-shaking counterclaim, a $400 million countersuit that not only stunned Blake's camp but sent tremors throughout the entire entertainment industry. It wasn't just a legal response, it was a declaration of war. Overnight, the dynamic of the narrative flipped. The public, once unified in sympathy for Blake, began to split. Commentators, fans, and fellow celebrities alike were suddenly forced to reassess everything they thought they knew about the situation. Was Blake's story truly airtight? Or had Justin been unfairly vilified by a narrative that moved faster than facts could catch up? Online forums exploded with debate. News anchors dissected every new filing. Social media feeds became battlegrounds, flooded with hashtags, edited clips, and think pieces on fame, manipulation, and accountability. The case, once viewed as a straightforward tale of justice, had now transformed into a cinematic thriller playing out in real time, complete with plot twists, high-stakes drama, and reputations on the line. The central question that hung in the air, who is telling the truth, became the obsession of millions. And the more both sides spoke, the murkier that truth became. Every new statement only seemed to deepen the mystery, turning the case into a psychological chess match that blurred the lines between reality and performance. How far would each of them go to prove their innocence? What were they willing to sacrifice to win? Those questions set the stage for a hearing that would shake Los Angeles to its core. A tense and pivotal 90-minute courtroom session that legal analysts described as the opening salvo in what could evolve into a years-long battle between two of Hollywood's most bankable stars. From the moment the courthouse doors opened that morning, it was clear that this was no ordinary hearing. The building buzzed with reporters, legal correspondents, and curious onlookers hoping to catch a glimpse of the drama. Inside the courtroom, the air was heavy, a mix of tension, anticipation, and quiet hostility. When the judge appeared, every conversation stopped, every phone was lowered, and all eyes turned toward the two figures who had once been admired for their grace and integrity. Blake, looking pale but poised, entered, flanked by her legal entourage, her signature confidence giving way to nervous glances and tightly clasped hands. Her immaculate composure, a hallmark of her public image, was visibly cracking under the weight of the moment. Across the aisle, Justin Baldoni made his entrance alongside his formidable attorney Brian Fredman, who exuded calm authority. Together they radiated control, their quiet confidence standing in sharp contrast to Blake's strained demeanor. Observers described the atmosphere as a pressure chamber, the kind of environment where even a single misplaced word could ignite chaos. The tension was palpable. Journalists scribbling notes, cameras clicking, spectators holding their breath. It didn't take long for sparks to fly. Blake's legal team moved swiftly, filing an emergency motion for a gag order that would restrict Fredman from making public statements about the case. Their argument was clear. His recent interviews and remarks were tainting the potential jury pool and creating an unfair trial environment. But the motion was a gamble, and one that didn't pay off. The judge, unimpressed and visibly irritated, dismissed it almost immediately, pointing out that Blake's own representatives had been equally vocal in the media. His sharp rebuke echoed through the courtroom, and even seasoned reporters later described the moment as a turning point. For Blake's team, that ruling was a crushing setback. It was more than just a procedural denial. It was a signal that the court wouldn't shield her from the media frenzy or the consequences of her own PR strategy. It meant that the battle would be fought in public, under a microscope, with every word dissected and weaponized. Suddenly, the safety net was gone. Blake's attorneys realized they would have to navigate not just the courtroom, but also the unforgiving court of public opinion, where perception often mattered more than evidence. The denial of the gag order left them exposed, vulnerable to the relentless noise of the press and the persuasive storytelling of Justin's side. Brian Fredman, sensing opportunity, wasted no time capitalizing on his victory. With the authority of someone who had just gained momentum, he stepped forward and began to methodically outline Justin's position. His delivery was calm but commanding, weaving a narrative that cast his client not as a perpetrator, but as a man wronged, a figure fighting to reclaim his dignity in the face of false accusations. His tone carried confidence, his words precision, and every sentence seemed carefully crafted not just for the judge, but for the watching media. Fredman knew the cameras were rolling, that headlines would quote him before the afternoon was over. He didn't just argue, he performed, and the courtroom was his stage. As the session drew to a close, murmurs rippled through the room. Journalists rushed to send out breaking news alerts, legal analysts prepared live broadcasts, and social media once again erupted. The day's outcome was clear. The balance of power had shifted. Blake's attempt to control the narrative had faltered, and Justin's team had seized the upper hand, if only temporarily. Yet the sense among observers was unanimous. This was merely the beginning. The real war was still ahead. A war of evidence, emotion, and endurance that could last not just months, but years. And as both camps left the courthouse under a blinding storm of flashbulbs and speculation, one truth became undeniable. Hollywood had never seen a battle quite like this. And by the time it was over, neither Blake Lively nor Justin Baldoni would ever be the same again. He began his presentation with an almost cinematic sense of timing, calm, deliberate, and commanding. Brian Fredman, known for his surgical precision in high-profile cases, stepped to the center of the courtroom and unveiled what he called a structured preview of the evidence his team intended to present in full at trial. It was not a simple collection of papers or casual remarks. It was a meticulously organized catalog of text exchanges, voice recordings, emails, and confidential messages spanning months of communication between Blake Lively, her representatives, and Justin Baldoni. As he spoke, the atmosphere grew heavier. Reporters' pens paused mid-air, and even seasoned attorneys leaned forward to catch every word. Fredman hinted at discrepancies between Blake's public statements and private conversations, suggesting that portions of her original complaint had been selectively edited or framed to create a misleading narrative. He never raised his voice, but his tone carried an unmistakable gravity, that of a man who knew his evidence could change the course of the entire case. Though no single irrefutable smoking gun was revealed during this initial hearing, the implications were explosive. Every slide of data, every allusion to unshared recordings felt like a spark thrown into a room filled with gasoline. Those present could feel the ripple effect immediately. Quiet murmurs spread through the gallery, and even some of Blake's own supporters in attendance began to exchange uneasy glances. The whisper spreading through the courtroom was unmistakable. Fredman's preview had shaken Blake's camp to its core. The woman once seen as untouchable in Hollywood now stood before a courtroom where confidence seemed to slip from her grasp. As the session continued, Blake's lawyers scrambled to contain the fallout. They filed motion after motion to block the admission of certain communications, to limit what Fredman could discuss publicly, and even to remove him from the upcoming depositions altogether. But one by one, the judge dismissed each request with a steady rhythm that felt like a drumbeat of defeat. The final blow, however, came when the court ruled that Blake would not be allowed to dictate who conducted her cross-examination. That meant she would have to face Brian Fredman himself during her deposition. The same attorney her legal team had described as intimidating, combative, and psychologically abusive. The courtroom gasped. For Blake's team, the decision wasn't just a legal setback. It was a devastating psychological blow that undercut their control over every aspect of the case. Fredman's calm smirk as the ruling was read said it all. The tide had turned. By the time the judge adjourned the session, the courtroom felt transformed. Analysts who had entered expecting a procedural hearing left buzzing about how Blake Lively had lost her first major round, and not over technicalities, but over the structural integrity of her legal strategy itself. Her blueprint, one designed around controlling optics, managing narratives, and limiting exposure, had suffered a critical rupture. Outside the courthouse, chaos unfolded within minutes. Paparazzi flooded the steps. Reporters shouted questions over one another. On social media, hashtags cost Team Blake and Team Justin erupted almost instantly, triggering a cultural spectacle. Twitter threads dissected Fredman's remarks frame by frame. TikTok users analyzed Blake's body language in slow motion. YouTube commentators streamed hour-long breakdowns of the judge's tone, Fredman's phrasing, and even the subtleties of Blake's reactions. Yet amid the noise, a notable shift began to take shape. For the first time since the controversy began, public opinion was no longer overwhelmingly in Blake's favor. Her supporters, once fiercely loyal, started expressing hesitation. Posts appeared questioning why she seemed so desperate to avoid Fredman's questioning if her evidence was as ironclad as she'd claimed. Others pointed out inconsistencies between her past interviews and what had just unfolded in court. For years, Blake's image had been untouchable. She was Hollywood's sweetheart, admired for her charm, professionalism, and perfect life with Ryan Reynolds. But this defeat, played out in front of millions, began to puncture that flawless facade. The media, always eager for blood, began circling. Bloggers and entertainment journalists published think pieces questioning her credibility. YouTubers uploaded exposés with titles like Blake's Crumbling Empire and What She Doesn't Want You to See. The narrative that once made her untouchable was rapidly eroding, piece by piece. Wild theories began to swirl across social platforms and gossip columns alike. Some speculated that Blake had been pressured by her management or PR team into filing the original lawsuit, a strategic but reckless attempt to protect her public image. Others whispered that her case was fueled by personal resentment or jealousy rather than truth, or that she had overestimated the strength of her evidence. And then there were those who believed something even darker, that the lawsuit was a preemptive strike to silence Justin before he could expose something damaging. Meanwhile, Justin's image was undergoing a remarkable transformation. Once seen as a reserved filmmaker, he now emerged as a sympathetic underdog, fighting back against what many were beginning to call a celebrity-fueled smear campaign. His calm demeanor, his consistent tone, and the judges' repeated rulings in his favor created a narrative that resonated deeply with audiences weary of Hollywood hypocrisy. Then came the move that changed everything. In a bold and calculated step, Justin's team launched a public website dedicated to the case. The site's design was clean, professional, and undeniably strategic, a visual statement of transparency. It hosted selective evidence, time-stamped text messages, snippets of emails, partial transcripts of recorded conversations, and metadata summaries that, at least on the surface, appeared to contradict parts of Blake's legal filings. The website drew massive traffic, crashing within hours of launch as millions flocked to examine the files themselves. The reaction was immediate and polarizing. Some hailed it as a masterstroke of transparency, a modern act of defiance against celebrity spin. Others condemned it as reckless, accusing Justin of weaponizing public sympathy. But regardless of opinion, one truth became clear. Justin had reclaimed the narrative. Within days, the conversation shifted entirely. Major networks hosted legal panels analyzing the ethics of evidence by website, while social media erupted into fiery debates about transparency, manipulation, and power dynamics in Hollywood. Blake's team issued a brief statement condemning the release as an act of defamation in disguise, but the damage was already done. The court of public opinion, unpredictable, emotional, and relentless, was now in session, and for the first time, Blake Lively was losing. What had begun as her confident march toward vindication had spiraled into a PR nightmare that threatened not just her lawsuit, but her very reputation. And as the world watched, captivated and divided, one thing became increasingly evident. This was no longer about money or even justice. It was about survival, truth, and the unraveling of two powerful Hollywood legacies in real time. He articulated his stance with an air of calm defiance, drawing a clear line in the sand. If Blake Lively could freely present her version of events to the media through glossy magazine spreads, emotional interviews, and carefully worded press statements, then surely, he argued, he had the same right to tell his story, unfiltered and unmanipulated. In a world where the public has grown cynical toward curated celebrity narratives, Justin's appeal for transparency resonated powerfully. He positioned himself not as a victim, but as a truth seeker, someone refusing to be silenced or defined by the noise of Hollywood's rumor mill. It was a masterstroke in optics. The more Blake's team appeared to restrict or control the narrative, the more Justin seemed like the voice of integrity. The conversation shifted. Commentators and influencers who once dismissed him as defensive began acknowledging that perhaps there was more to his story. His calm composure in interviews and measured tone in statements stood in stark contrast to the increasingly frantic messaging from Blake's camp. Public perception began to pivot, and the once unshakable wave of sympathy for Blake started to fracture. Still, no examination of Blake's unraveling could ever be complete without confronting the immense shadow cast by Ryan Reynolds, her husband and Hollywood counterpart. Together, they were long seen as the pinnacle of glamour and grace, the modern power couple whose chemistry and humor captivated audiences both on and off screen. Their combined influence spanned film, fashion, and business ventures worth hundreds of millions. They weren't just actors. They were a brand, a symbol of effortless success and mutual support. Yet now, the prospect of Justin Baldoni's $400 million counterclaim succeeding has injected a devastating new dimension into their lives. That number, so large it almost seemed surreal, suddenly became a tangible threat to their empire. Legal experts warned that if Justin were to prevail, it could wipe out vast portions of Blake and Ryan's joint holdings, including shared production assets, real estate investments, and even future profit shares from ongoing projects. The very foundation of their financial empire was now trembling. Behind closed doors, whispers have begun circulating throughout